Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pride Month 2025. I am so excited that we're all above ground and still breathing. We are here, we are queer, and we know how to show up. So we are doing that in so many cases. I'm so proud of all the posts that I'm seeing on social media and on people's pages because they are sharing and supporting and loving the LGBTQIA plus community. And it's not just us in the community that's sharing pride, but it's our allies, people who are on the ground in the rallies doing the thing. And it's a beautiful, beautiful sight to see. Now, internally, we may feel pride and we may not feel pride. So what do we do about that? It is pride. We're supposed to be excited. And sometimes, there might be a problem. So I talk today about pride and what that may resemble for us. Now, these are my thoughts. It may not represent your thoughts. It may not come even close to what you think or feel when you think of pride this month, but here we go anyway. This is the Midge's mumblings on pride. So for me, I broke it down, and I'm taking each letter, and I'm going to kind of pull it apart a little bit. So for me, pride is personal. It's personal because only I can decide whether or not I really feel pride in this month. Do I feel proud of being an out lesbian person? Am I proud of all of the things, the journey that I took to get to this moment? The personal journey for everyone is an individual journey. And we've seen that on this podcast, that even though we all are on some part of the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, and we all had to come out, that coming out affected our families, our churches, our friends, and us all in a unique and different way. Our stories may sound similar, but it's a personal journey, and only we can take that journey. Nobody can do it for us. Now, some people get outed instead of doing it themselves, but it's still a personal journey of how we came, whether we chose to come out, if we were outed, or if we came out because we wanted to. Sometimes in that personal mode, you may have that religious trauma inside of you that affected your pride for a very long time. It may still affect your pride if you have had religious trauma, because that inner homophobia, that feeling of not enough, not good enough, not right enough for God, all of those things conflict with feeling pride. Inner shame, inner homophobia, all of those emotions and social and religious expectations that we absorb in our psyche and in our awareness of ourselves is very, very hard to move past and to not feel it. And we've talked on this show before that no matter how out we may be now, it doesn't take much to trigger that past trauma if we have gone through religious trauma. Our own family history can conflict with whether or not we feel pride, not just in our personal lives, but just in our soul. If we've had family members that were abusive, if we had family members that did not approve or jump up and hug us and validate us when we came out, that family history of bigotry, racism, othering, not even supporting you as far as emotional support, those types of traumas also are deeply embedded in our own personal awareness, our coping skills, our identities. That's what makes it so difficult sometimes to feel proud of ourselves and to claim that we are all in with the month of Pride because it does revisit and bring up a lot of the past, especially when we're always getting some pushback. If your church is preaching against uh, gay people, then you don't feel safe being out and proud in your church. You may find that in your place of business. You may find that in your neighborhood. I told you probably the story of, having a sign out during the election and a person in my neighborhood coming through the neighborhood and screaming out the the other candidate's name at me and having all of his signs in his yard, and still does, by the way. He still has his signs for the current leader of this country in his yard, and it's a boastful kind of thing, in a way. But that does remind us that the pride we may feel this month is not shared by everyone on the planet. Not everybody cares, not everybody wants to hear it. They degrade it. So when we think about pride this year, we have to remember that it's not about what other people think. It is about your own personal journey, how you got here, and the pride that you can feel inside yourself that you did not give up, you did not give in, and you made sure that you represented your authentic self. And that's a personal choice. As we look at the R in the word pride, I I thought about being righteousness, the righteousness of our lives. And if you hear that word in the Bible, it's usually talking about, lining up with what God expects. To, be a follower of the God of your understanding, to do what's right. But the kicker of this whole thing about righteousness is that one, we already have it. We are already a part of God's family because of the death of Jesus. However, it goes a little bit more in detail when we think about being in right relationship with not only the God of our understanding, but with each other. So when we think about the R in pride, we have to remember that we are on this planet with all of our friends, families, loved ones, and those who are trying to take away our rights. So the rights that we should have or could have also is contingent on whether or not the rest of the people in power want to give it to us, which is one of my personal pet peeves. You've probably heard me rant about it, that I don't like the idea that we have to decide on who's sitting behind that desk in the Oval Office to either take the pen to give us our rights or to take the pen to take away our rights. But our personal rights is different than righteousness. Righteousness is that no matter what the outward world thinks or does about our own personal rights, to be righteous, to live righteously, and to have righteousness, it's on me, really. It's on me to treat every other person in the right way. Not only am I following the God of my understanding's expectations of me by doing that, but for all marginalized people, for all people who aren't following God's laws and expectations, I am commanded to love them, to be there for them if they need me, and not to look at who they are or how they behave or how they show up. Righteousness in me is showing up in the way that God expects me to show up. Whew, that's a lot. That's a lot. Now we think of the Bible story about the Good Samaritan and how, some of these pious priests and all these, passed him by. But the person who should have been at odds with him because were not from the same place and they were kind of enemies, basically. But the person that was righteous stopped and helped this man in distress, not caring where you came from, who you voted for, what you're doing, how ugly the bill is that you're supporting. If someone is in need, if someone shows up in our world and in our awareness, that we treat them with the respect and the dignity and the love of the God of our understanding. So, personally, we are responsible for our own inner healing in order to feel the pride and accept the pride that we can have being a child of God, and that our righteousness is contingent on how we also treat others, not just how they treat us, not how we want to show up for the God of our understanding, but it's a total package. That how I treat other people depends on whether or not I'm really in right relationship with God and allowing that God love to flow through me, even to my enemies. The I in pride for me reminded me of the term I am. And as I was on my journey of self exploration and trying to accept my ability to be gay with God, I found great meditations that used the phrase I am. In the Bible, when Moses asked who God was, God said, I am that I am. And those are powerful creation words. I am. I am is a way to connect with the divine and to be in that bubble, to own the little piece of divinity we have as God breathed life into Adam. So when we say I am and we relate it back to pride, it's all about not othering ourselves, not feeding into the abusive language that people have used against us, not feeding into how the Bible was mistranslated, not feeding into the inner homophobia that we feel, to know that I am created to be the God of my understanding. Now, I am not God. I am not as powerful as God. I am not human and divine. I am human with a little bit of breath of life breathed in me. So it connects me to God. It it sets me on the path of my own righteousness and my own ability to live beyond my life because I am that piece of God and Jesus was sacrificed for me and for you. And so when I claim that I am, that is the most connected I can be in my creative soul. So that when I speak about it, I need to remember where I came from. I didn't come from my mama and my daddy necessarily. They might have been the vehicle that got me here, but it was the God of my understanding that created me. And so it's really important for me to always remember that pride is a connection to who I came from. It's not just my immediate earthly family history, it is connecting me all the way back to the one and only God of my understanding that wanted me to be a part of this everlasting kingdom. So our personal relationship with God is the breath of life. We are righteous when we are in right living with the God of our understanding and with every other person on this earth. And I am is connecting us to the love and the intention of God and how God wanted us to show up in the world. So that brings us to the letter D. And for me, I thought of destiny. Now, normally, destiny could mean that you just don't feel worthy enough to have it. You're undeserving of something great and something powerful. But it's not about having a destiny of being powerful or great. It's really about how to be the hands and feet of Jesus. When we live in destiny, our pride can show because we are doing whatever God expects us to do on this earth. It could be feeding people, feeding the hungry. And that doesn't mean you make meals that go for $1,000 a plate and you have like two beans on there. It's about being able to know how to feed people. Do you feed them with your uplifting words? Do you feed them with actual food that you may take to someone? Is it putting your hand on somebody's shoulder or on their back when they're grieving? Is the way that you show up in the world and the part of what you're destined to do is to uplift people along your path and whoever shows up. I met a guy one time that said, I didn't know I was coming today, but I walked out of my house and I thought about this meeting and I thought I'd come. Or I always wait to see what comes into my brain, and I feel like that's what Spirit is leading me to do. So he never plans things. He just waits until he gets inspired, which is an amazing kind of way to live. It would drive this OCD girl crazy, but that's his way of living his destiny, is allowing the inspiration to guide him. I don't know how he did that in his youth or how he did that as a person that might have been in the workforce. I don't feel like showing up today. I don't I don't know, but it was an interesting concept for me, and I muddled that around in my brain for a long time about how would you really just leave everything to the whim of inspiration. It totally intrigued me, and I didn't try it because I'm just not that person. And that's the whole point of having personal pride. You are not trying to be somebody else and mimic someone else. All you have to do is be yourself. Use your personal gifts. Use your inspired thoughts also to do the things that you are equipped to do. It isn't about being like anybody else. It's just allowing the love to show through you in everything you think, say, and do. And those things every single day will be a piece of your destiny. So it's really our own personal journey through pride. We do what we're expected to do. We do it with love. We admit that we are a piece of this most loving God of our understanding, and we do what we need to do every day to share that love. The last letter, E. Embody your authenticity, your authentic self. Now, it is so important to remember that even in the LGBTQIA plus community, there are expectations. How do you dress? What do you look like? Where it does, I think in every group of people, there are people who will try to make you to conform to what is right in their mind. And I think that's why we have so many letters in the in our community, is because everybody didn't fall into just one label. And I know that some people don't like to be labeled, and I totally understand that, but it's when we think of personal identity, when we're talking about ourselves, where we came from, labels have always been thrust upon us. And so that's why some people just say, I'm not identifying with any label, and that's absolutely perfectly fine. For those who do like to identify their own individual path separate from everybody else, it's still okay to have an identifier. It's not necessarily a label for some people. It's just the way I identify. And that's the whole point of all of the letters in our community. So I identify as gay, I identify as lesbian, I identify as queer. I I like all of that, and I don't care about it maybe being a label. It is how I choose to identify. And I love to be able to use those words without feeling shame and without feeling that connection to all of the people that impeded my journey for 30 years because of all the shame and the religious trauma and all of that. So now when I use those words, and like I've said before, when I use the word God, even though it freaks a lot of people out in our community, but that word was full of shame and bigotry for me. And when I realized that that was how the world treated that the use of the word God with me, was now my way to reclaim it. Because you can't take anything away from me unless I follow you through that. And I'm not following you with that anymore. That the God of my understanding means that I can say the word God and not feel that I am an abomination to the God of my understanding, because God created me to be my most authentic self. And even though I got derailed for 30 years, I am now understanding that my personal pride journey has been everything that created me to be me. And without some of the hard stuff, I wouldn't have found the good stuff. So when I am embodying my authenticity, whether it's by using a certain word to describe myself, whether it's to help people in ways that most people wouldn't think I would want to help them, or just living my life and looking for ways to put love into the world and empathy and kindness. This month is just one blip on our entire lifetime of months. Yet when we pause to celebrate it and to keep showing up, even though an administration wants to wipe us out, an administration wants to take away our marriages, this administration wants to do all these things to not just us, but a lot of people across the planet, we are standing in solidarity with our own personal journeys. And we can say, do I feel pride in myself? Yes, I am gay. I am lesbian. I am queer. However you identify or don't identify, you are who you are because God created you to be you. And so when we go through this month and we come out of this month, when we go to the voting polls, when we go to meetings and rallies and call our senators and representatives and voice our opinions and what we want to see in the world around us, we can feel pride because we are still above ground and still breathing, and we are children of the God of our understanding, who loves us, who supports us, who is with us right now. And I think God smiles when we feel that pride because everything that God created, He saw as good. Thank you, everybody, for being here today on this Pride Monday. I hope that your journey through this day brings you nothing but wonderful things. Thank you for honoring this podcast with your presence, subscribing, supporting, and sharing. I really, really appreciate each and every one of you. If you'd like to find out more information about me or to connect with me, go to the Gay with God show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. Check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do a monthly Zoom group entitled My Faith Journey. There you will find supportive people to talk about all sorts of things, and we love showing up for one another in community on Zoom. Remember to answer all the questions so that I can invite you inside. And if you need support to help you through your coming out and or faith journey, go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com and scroll all the way to the bottom and see how to connect with me. And since Pride is in the air, you can also go to my website, gaywithgod.com, and find my memoir, Gay with God, Reclaiming My Faith, Honoring My Story. I would love for you to support this memoir in these times of banned books, and I would like to get my book out there and let people remember that we are authentically good and all of our stories matter. If you are listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, are not even sure if you're gay, or even if you don't like labels, God has always been within you, even when you didn't know it. You have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, We, as a community, will keep this show visible and our community stronger.
Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.